Hi everyone, I'm Ariane Montederamos to report Chapter 17, which is the management of cash and marketable securities.
I'm going to discuss about cash and marketable securities. I will also have a brief introduction for it, and then the liquid asset balance, cash flows and cash budget, corporate bank relations, optimal liquid asset balance, the practice of liquidity management, controlling cash collection and disbursement, and the last one is flow.
Cash is the sum of the currency a company has on hand and the funds on deposits in bank checking accounts. And cash is the medium of exchange that permits management to carry on the various functions of the business organizations. In fact, the survival of a company depend on the availability of cash to meet financial obligations on time. Cash management involves much more than simply paying bills and receiving payments for goods and services. The cash management function is concerned with determining the optimal size of a firm's liquid asset balance. The most efficient methods of controlling the collection and disbursement of cash. The appropriate types and amount of short-term investments a firm should make.
Liquid asset balance. Firm holds liquid asset balances for a number of reasons, including the following.
Transactions motive. A cash inflows and outflows of the day-to-day operations of a firm are not perfectly synchronized. Liquid asset balances are necessary to serve as a buffer between these flows. This helps a firm handle seasonal fluctuations in cash flow. For example, a firm may wish to hold a large amount of liquid assets during surplus amounts and drawn down on them during deficit months.
Cautionary motive.
Because future cash flows have the ability to borrow additional funds at short notice are often uncertain. Liquid asset balances are necessary to meet unexpected requirements for cash. Future requirements, which includes fixed outlays required in specific dates, such as quarterly dividends and tax payments, capital expenditures, and payments of loans and bond issues. A firm also may hold as liquid assets the proceeds from a new debt or equity securities offered prior to use this fund for expansion. Speculative reasons. Some firms build up large cash balances in preparation for major acquisitions. For example, in early 1999, Ford Motor Company built up its liquid asset balances to nearly $24 billion. Security analysts expected Ford to make a major acquisition. Particularly, it could identify one or more attractively priced firms to acquire. In fact, this is just what Ford did. It acquired Volvo for $6.5 billion. The large cash balances gave Ford timing flexibility in pursuing acquisitions. Compensating balances. A firm generally has to hold cash balances to compensate its bank for the service provided.
Cash inflows or receipts occur when customers pay for their purchases, when a firm obtains bank loans, when it sells new issues of debt and equity securities, and when it sells or collects interest on marketable securities. Cash outflows or disbursements occur when a firm makes payment suppliers. When a firm pays wages to employees, taxes to government, interest and principal to bondholders, and cash dividends to shareholders. And when a firm repays bank loans and purchases, as shown in figure 17.1, the firm's cash balance is affected by every transaction that involves either a cash inflow or a cash outflow. Cash inflows or receipts occur when customers pay for their purchases. When a firm obtains bank loans, when it sells new issues of debt and equity securities, and when it sells or collects interest on marketable securities. Cash outflows or disbursements occur when a firm makes payment to suppliers, when a firm pays wages to employees, taxes to governments, interest and principal to bondholders, and a cash dividends to shareholders, and when a firm repays bank loans and purchases marketable securities. Therefore, the cash balance at the end of any given period is a result of any interrelated activities.
Cash budget. Forecasted cash receipts and disbursements over the planning horizon of the firm. A complete cash budget also contains a forecast of any cumulative cash shortage or surpluses expected during each of the budgeting sub-periods, which is the kind of information
Corporate
needed
bank
in making the
relations.
management
A
decisions.
firm's bank provides a variety of both tangible and intangible services.
The most significant tangible services includes the following. The first is disbursement, wire transfer, direct deposit, and payroll checking accounts. Second, the collection of deposits, including lockbox, automated collections, depository transfer, and vault services. The third is the cash management. The fourth is the line of credit, terms of loans or both, handling of dividend payments, and the sixth one is the registration and transfer of firm stock. Here are the intangible services. First is the supplying credit information. Second is the providing consultation on such matters as economic conditions, mergers, and international businesses. A bank is compensated for the services it provides by charging the firm explicit fees and/or requiring the maintenance of a minimum cash balance or compensating balance in its investments. And the interest income realized is compensation for the various services rendered to a firm. Although some banks require firms to maintain absolute minimum compensating balances, most stipulated minimum average balances. Due to comparison among banks and differences in the methods of using to compute account income, service fees, and compensating balance requirements for a given level of account activity vary from bank to bank. As a result, a firm should occasionally do some comparison shopping to determine whether its present bank is offering the best fee schedule, compensating balance requirements, and total package of service currently
The firm must
available.
weigh the benefits and costs of holding these various balances. The determination of an optimal liquid asset balance reflects the classic risk versus return trade-off facing financial managers because liquid assets earn relatively low rates of return. A firm can increase its profitability in relation to its asset base by minimizing liquid asset balances. However, low liquid asset balances expose
Giving the opportunity cost of holding liquid asset balances. Why would a firm ever maintain a bank balance exceeding the compensating balance requirements? The answer is these balances help the firm avoid the shortage costs associated with inadequate liquid asset balances. Shortage costs can take many different forms, including the following: foregone cash discounts, deterioration of the firm's credit rating, higher
The
interest
practice of
expenses,
liquidity management.
possible financial
In practice, a
insolvency.
wide variety of liquidity policies are found to exist among firms. Shown in Figure 17.2, the optimal liquid asset balance occurs at the point where the sum of the opportunity holding costs. Admittedly, many of these shortage costs are difficult to measure. Nevertheless, a firm should attempt to evaluate the trade-offs among these costs in order to economize on cash holdings. Gilmer has performed empirical tests to determine if firms actually do face a U-shaped total cost function associated. These results were consistent with the concept of an optimal liquid asset balance. Table 17.1 offers a sample of the liquidity policies practiced by different firms in several industries. As the table shows, liquidity practices, as measured by the ratio of cash and marketable securities to total assets, vary significantly among industries and among firms within an industry. Utility firms, retailers, and service industry establishments, such as restaurants, tend to hold relatively lower liquid asset balance as a proportion of total assets that do firms in the automotive and computer industries. Although this table does not provide data on small to medium-sized firms, in general, it can be observed that larger firms tend to hold lower liquid asset balances relative to total assets than smaller firms. This is because larger firms tend to have better access to backup short-term financing from commercial banks or the commercial paper market. Because smaller firms have more limited credit access, they tend to hold greater liquid asset balances as a caution against uncertain future needs for funds.
Controlling the collection and disbursement of cash. Cash collection involves expediting collections by reducing the lag between the time customers pay their bills and the time the checks are collected. Cash disbursement is the slow payment so that the firm can keep the funds invested or in the bank as possible. Cash collection and disbursement policies are designed to reduce a firm's liquid asset balances by exploiting imperfections in the collection and payment process. The objective is to speed up collections and slow down disbursements. Financial managers should be aware that policies designed to speed up collections and slow down disbursements are highly competitive. If all firms were to employ the same procedures, the net benefit would be zero. Thus, incremental benefits associated with procedures designed to control collections and disbursements will accrue only to most aggressive and progressive firms. Similarly, cash managers who do not at least as much as the average firm in speeding up collections and slowing disbursements will find their firms at a competitive disadvantage.
cash balance, as shown on the bank's books, generally differs from that shown on the firm's own books. There are three primary components or sources of flow. First is the mail flow. It is the delay between the time a payment is sent to the payee through the mail and the time that the payment arrives at the payee's office. The second one is the processing flow. It represents the delay between receipt of payment from a payer and the deposit of that receipt in the payee's account. Lastly is the check clearing flow. It is the delay between the time a check is deposited in the payee's account and the time the funds are available to be spent.